Welcome to notebook number 2, the DataFrame and series. So the DataFrame and series are the two primary objects when using pandas to analyze data. A DataFrame is a two-dimensional table of rows and columns, while a series is a single dimension of data. So how do you get one of these DataFrames or series? Well, you can create your own by hand, but that's very tedious and uncommon. What's more common is that you'll read in data from some file. Now, Pandas gives you many different tools to read in data from all sorts of different file formats. We're not going to cover that here. There will be sections later on in this book that cover that. The focus here is going to be on the data frame and series itself. So one of the most common ways to read in data is with this read CSV function in Pandas. It's able to read in these plain text files where each piece of data is separated from another by some delimiter, and usually this delimiter is a comma. That's where the name CSV comes from. And we're going to read in this City of Chicago bike rides. Now, before we do that, I want to take a look at the raw data file itself. So this is just some pure Python over here that iterates through the first 3 rows and just prints them out to the screen. So let's take a look. And you'll see that here are the 3 different rows. And if you look closely, there are commas that separate each piece of data, like this. Now, the way that most CSVs are formatted is that the first row is the columns of the table. So you can see how that row is significantly different than the other two. The other two have the actual data that you care about. So this is a pretty typical CSV, each piece of data separated by a comma. Now, we're going to read in this data into a Pandas data frame, and we're going to use this read CSV function. Now, there are many options in this read CSV function, but we're not going to look at them just yet because, again, our focus is going to be on the data frame and series itself. So what I'm going to do is now I'm going to actually use Pandas. I'm going to import it in, alias it as PD. I'm then going to use this read CSV function, passing it in the location of the data set like this as a string, and the data frame will be returned as the variable bikes. Let's go ahead and execute this. And so it is successfully read it in. We cannot see this, what bikes is, because we have an assignment statement. This is no different than if you assign A to 5. In order to view the actual value, you have to put the variable name in a cell by itself, or just put it in the bottom of a cell. And that's how you can actually view the value. So we still haven't seen our data frame. We don't even know it's a data frame, but we can verify this with the type function. And if we just pass in the data frame name like this, we can verify that indeed it is a data frame. So the type always comes at the end. This is called the fully qualified path name, where you have the package name and then sub packages and then finally the class name at the very end. So this is indeed a data frame object. Now let's go ahead and view this data frame by putting the name in a cell by itself and executing this. So by default, Pandas will show the first 5 and last 5 rows. This data frame has 50,000 rows. It has 11 columns. You can see all 11 of them. By default, if they're more than 20, then it'll just kind of cut some of them off. It's important to note that this is just a display of the data frame. There are 50,000 rows, and we're just getting a visual representation of 10 of them. You can see the little dots over here indicating that there's more data. So the data does exist, you just don't get to view it in your notebook. Pandas smartly just has a limit on what is viewable, and we can change these limits later if you want to see more of the data. But that is what you'll see by default when you put a data frame and look at it in its own cell. Okay, so the first methods that we're going to cover here are the head and tail methods. I believe these are very important and very simple methods. So the head method will just show us the first 5 rows of the data frame by default. So the head, of course, so these are just the first 5 rows. This is often what you'll want when you're doing a data analysis. You don't have to look at all of the rows. You'll just want to look at the top just to make sure that the result is what you want and then move on. Now there is a single parameter you can pass here, and it is n. You don't have to specify it usually. So let's say I want to look at only the first 3. Well, I can do, I just put that in there and get that. Similarly, the tail method will return the last 5 rows by default. So there they are. And again, you can put in any other number you want, and you'll get that exact number of rows returned. All right, so that is just a very quick intro into the data frame and the head and tail methods. We'll go much deeper into the rest of it in the following videos.